Hello, I'm Henry Keane. UATV English is online as usual, giving you the Ukrainian perspective of the reality of war. Watch in the episode. Ukrainian drones did it again. Successfully target Russian military airfield. Russia weaponizes prisoners of war swap. Robert Fico will ban any EU sanctions against Russia. Please comment and subscribe to our channel while watching this episode. By doing so, you help Ukraine to fight off Russian aggression as it helps the voice of Ukraine to be heard around the globe. Welcome to the News Pulse. On the night of June 9th, Special Operation Forces of Ukraine, in collaboration with other units of Ukraine's defense forces, carried out a successful strike on the Savasleyka airfield located in the Nizhny Novgorod region of the Russian Federation. This was confirmed by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. According to preliminary information, for now, Ukrainian forces eliminated two enemy aircraft like MiG-31 and Su-30-34 jets. The Russian occupiers used the Savasleyka airfield to launch attacks on Ukrainian territory. The General Staff also notes that MiG-31K fighters, which are carriers of Kinzhal air ballistic missiles, regularly take off from this exact military facility. More good news. Ukraine's unmanned system forces also successfully targeted the facilities in Russian Scientific Research Institute of Radio Engineering called Progress. Located in Cheboksary, as it confirmed by Ukrainian General Staff as well, it was confirmed that the facility was hit by at least two UAVs, resulting in a large-scale fire. This defense industry enterprise manufactures adaptive antennas Comet, which are used in strike drones to control Shahed, as well as in the control modules of guided aerial bombs and other high-precision weapons used against Ukraine.
A military-industrial complex facility where antennas for Shaheds were manufactured was hit as part of the efforts to reduce the enemy's ability to manufacture air attack weapons. On the night of June 9th, units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Unmanned Systems Forces, in cooperation with other components of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, struck the facilities of GSC Vinir Progress, LLC ABS Electra, in the city of Cheboksary in the Chuvash Republic, Russian Federation. From a publication of the Ukrainian Stratcom on Telegram.
In Tatarstan, an air raid alert lasted for 6 hours overnight. In the morning, residents of Kazan reported a large fire on social media. Local community groups began sharing various theories. Residents mentioned thick black smoke coming from the direction of weapon storage sites and also reported an alleged attack on the Kazan state gunpowder plant. Locals said that something is exploding. Also, Ukrainian drones were flying over the Tambov and Voronezh regions throughout the night, according to local online communities. And the very logic of this war, actually, that Ukraine did not start, but now bringing more and more back to the aggressor's territory. During the second round of peace talks in Istanbul, Ukraine and Russia agreed previously to exchange 6,000 for 6,000 bodies of deceased soldiers, as well as the exchange of those wounded, seriously ill and young prisoners of war. President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the first stage of the exchange should have taken place past weekend already. However, Russia just won't be Russia. If it would have fulfilled its promise, it just goes against the Russian national paradigm to act according to any kind of international code or previously achieved agreement. And of course, knowing that any stall in POW swap process would be taken negatively by international communities, so Russia did exactly what it always have been doing, blamed the other party for its own wrongdoing.
The Ukrainian side unexpectedly postponed both the reception of bodies and the exchange of prisoners of war for an indefinite period. Vladimir Medinsky, head of the Russian negotiations team.
Right, well, I'm not going to look now for any justification, like why would Ukraine, that is 100 times smaller than Russia, ever stall the POW swap that is of utter importance to Ukraine, both politically and militarily? No, but what I'm going to do, though, is to remind you, it is not the first time Russians weaponized the POW exchange. They did that before. In Olenivka, Russia simply killed Ukrainian prisoners of war and said it just never happened. They said it wasn't them. They said it was Ukrainians who killed Ukrainians, so only to blame good old Mother Russia in that atrocious crime. Ukrainians are killing Ukrainians. Russians just have nothing to do with that. This is how Russian outstandingly effective propaganda machine works. Whatever the absurd Kremlin says, it literally turns it legit. It was Russian propaganda that turned legit the absolutely absurd idea that Bucha also was a Ukrainian deed, where Ukrainians were killing their own kin just to blame Russians for that. And Medinsky, as a minister of Russian culture of propaganda, certainly knows perfectly well what he is doing now. And Medinsky is doing now, shifting the blame. For those of you living in the West and find it quite confusing to tell who is who in this POW swap stalled and who stole what in the first place, here is an indisputable litmus for you using which you will be able to fact-check anything Russia says about this war. Russia invaded Ukraine. Full stop. That is the one and only cause of any prisoner swap in the first place. And continuing the topic of indiscriminate shelling of Ukraine, Sumy and the region face increased and unprecedented attacks. For the first time, the center of the city was attacked by long-range cluster MLRS tornado. 4 missiles reached the city center last week. Between the morning of June 8th and the morning of June 9th, Russian forces carried out nearly 90 strikes, targeting 35 settlements across 15 local communities in Ukraine's Sumy oblast. With the Sumy and the Shostka districts suffering the most and the heaviest shelling, according to the Sumy Regional Military Administration, the strikes resulted in injuries to at least 9 civilians.
We were hit not only in the area where we were standing on the avenue, but also in the city. All the cars were riddled with shrapnel. Many walls and windows were also damaged by shrapnel. 3 people were killed and more than 25 were wounded.
In one of the communities, a Russian Lancet drone loitering munition hit a civilian area, wounding 7 people. One of the victims, born in 1996, is a pregnant woman. In the Asman community, 2 civilians, a 58-year-old and a teenager born in 2007, were wounded in a drone strike involving FPV drones. So, like in Kherson, human sufferers have started. Russian forces employed a wide array of weapons, including guiding aerial bombs, multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, and munitions dropped from drones. The attack included over 70 MLRS strikes, more than 20 explosive jumps from drones, at least 10 is guided bomb strikes. In the Nizhny community, a shop, a school, a private home, and 4 vehicles in the Asman community, 1 private residence. For Ukraine, every missile and means of downing missiles and drones is absolutely essential. Imagine what the military and President Zelensky personally had to experience when the Ministry of Defense told that 20,000 anti-drone missiles ordered for Ukraine by the Biden administration back then were just moved to the Middle East instead by Secretary Hexet.
And we counted on this project. 20,000 between us, 20,000 missiles, anti-Shahed missiles. It was not expensive, but it's special technology. So we counted on these 20,000 missiles. Today in the morning, my Minister of Defense told me that the United States moved it to the Middle East.
FPV drones and other types of UAVs were also used to target infrastructure across the region. The strikes damaged or destroyed completely several civilian facilities. As a result of the shelling, 21 civilians were evacuated from border communities in coordination with local authorities, of course. The State Emergency Service, the National Police and volunteer organizations. The air raid alarm in the region lasted over 14 hours during the day. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico stated on June 9 that his country will oppose any new EU sanctions against Russia that it considers detrimental to Slovakia's national interests, whatever that means. The phrase "considers detrimental" remains vague, raising concerns about what exactly the Slovak government might find unacceptable, especially if those measures significantly impact Russia. Fico's remarks came shortly after the Slovak parliament passed a resolution urging the government not to back any additional sanctions against Moscow. Speaking at a press conference, Robert Fico declared, "If sanctions would harm Slovakia, I will not support them. He specifically cited the example of restrictions that could affect Russian fuel supplies for Slovak nuclear power plants, saying such measures would be unacceptable.
If sanctions would harm Slovakia, I will not support them. I want to be a constructive partner within the European Union, but not at Slovakia's expense. Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia.
So that is the official position of an EU member country and Ukraine's neighbor. We have one more neighbor that often claims and begins in possibly anti-Ukrainian narratives as well. And I'm talking about the newly elected president of Poland. Our colleagues have made a report for you to better understand the situation in the Polish-Ukrainian relations.
Ukraine's accession to the European Union currently does not align with Poland's national interests, said the newly elected president, Karol Nawrocki. He cited unresolved historical issues, particularly the exhumation of victims of the Volhynian massacre, as well as preferential treatment granted to Ukraine by the EU in areas like logistics and agriculture. However, Nawrocki said he is open to cooperation with Kyiv on these matters and believes that resolving them would benefit both countries.
We need to reach a compromise and consensus on these issues. I see Ukraine as a country that, while bravely defending itself from the Russian Federation, must also respect the interests of other nations supporting it. Poland played a leading role in aiding Ukraine thanks to President Andrzej Duda and the openness of the Polish people. This creates a foundation for deeper reflection. We too have the right to defend our national interests.
According to Nawrocki, one of the priorities of his administration will be to defend the interests of Polish citizens. He advocates for stricter border control and measures to curb illegal migration. However, he emphasized that he does not intend to target Ukrainians living in Poland, who, in his view, play a positive role in the country's economy.
Ukrainians in Poland have felt the openness of our people, our hearts and our homes during a dramatic time. Those Ukrainians who contribute to the Polish economy and GDP will see that in practice, nothing is going to change. However, during my campaign, I made it clear, Poland and the Polish people come first.
Nawrocki ran as an independent candidate, although his campaign was funded and organized by the opposition party Law and Justice, PIS, and his platform closely mirrored theirs. PIS also helped current President Andrzej Duda win both his terms. Analysts note that the party is likely to have significant influence over Nawrocki's future policies. Recently, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Polish President Andrzej Duda. Duda reaffirmed support for Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations and promised to visit Ukraine before the end of his term.
The presidents of Ukraine and Poland discussed in detail bilateral relations, diplomatic efforts, and the importance of exerting pressure on Russia to achieve a just and lasting peace. Both leaders share the same position. It is crucial to increase joint pressure from the United States, Europe, and other countries around the world on Russia, and to continue seeking solutions that will help stop its aggression. From the official website of the President of Ukraine,
Nawrocki has taken a more cautious stance on Ukraine's potential NATO membership. While he supports Ukraine in resisting Russian aggression, he believes admitting Ukraine into the alliance would lead to a direct confrontation between NATO and Moscow. Defense against the Russian threat was a key issue in the presidential campaign. Nawrocki pledged to modernize the Polish military and increase the number of service members to 300,000. However, he is dissatisfied with the EU's defense policies and sees the United States as Poland's main strategic partner in this area.
There are 10,000 US troops stationed in Poland. NATO is the cornerstone of our national security. Of course, we must strengthen our own armed forces. That's essential. In today's global security architecture, the United States is our most important partner. That's why I'm glad I had discussions during my visit to the US and came away with a clear understanding. We can rely on our American allies in economic, technological, and military spheres.
Nawrocki's narrow election victory, by less than 2%, has revealed deep divisions in Polish society. Experts say he has already clashed with pro-European Prime Minister Donald Tusk, the head of the ruling Civic Platform Party. Nawrocki has called Tusk the worst prime minister since 1989. In response, Tusk has announced plans to soon introduce a motion of no confidence against the new president. Reported by Andriy Dimitrenko, UATV News.
That's it for today. My name is Uni Keen and we are UATV English. Thank you so very much for staying with us. Your presence and opinion is of utter importance as Ukraine is fighting for the same values you would: freedom and sovereignty. It was News Pulse. Stay tuned for more already tomorrow and see you right at the next beat. Goodbye.